Hi, I'm Pamela Davis, and I'm welcoming you again to my YouTube channel, Reincarnation Chronicle. I am an investigative transformationalist, and as we go along, you'll understand a little bit more about what that means to me as I explore life's great questions, and certainly reincarnation and the survival of the soul are among life's greatest questions. But one of the questions that you might legitimately and easily have regarding reincarnation is why, if it's real, wasn't it taught in Christian or Jewish tradition? It is, and in even Islamic tradition, in the Judeo-Christian, the big three religions, we really don't hear anything much about it. Well, actually, over the centuries, beginning in the Middle Ages, Dark Ages, Middle Ages, the Jewish mystical writers have written a great deal about reincarnation. And the earliest church fathers of Christianity were very familiar with it, taught it, endorsed it. We're talking about the giants of early Christianity, such as Bishop Synesius of Ptolemais, Bishop Clement of Alexandria, Bishop Origen, who was so very famous, and also St. Augustine, among just a few. Why were they teaching it? Why did they believe it? Well, because in the earliest Gospels, and a lot of the suppressed Gospels, the what do they call them? The apocalyptic and other hidden, suppressed writings of early Christianity, the teachings of Jesus included reincarnation very plainly. You know, at the time of following Christ's crucifixion, in the 100 years following, there sprang up, experts say, somewhere around 200 Gospels that circulated throughout the Mediterranean, in which people were conversant with and quoted and were very familiar with and believed in very much. And out of these 200, as we know, there are 5 Gospels that remain to us in the standard New Testament. And there are various reasons that explain this. Some of these Gospels were in fact lost, but most of them were suppressed because they did not agree or couldn't be brought into agreement with the doctrine that was adopted when Christianity was made the official religion of the Roman Empire by Constantine in the early 4th century. Now, why would the teaching of reincarnation be suppressed? Well, there are again a lot of theories about this, but and a lot of original stories too. Some say that, well, it just was never part of the original teaching. That definitely is not true. You know, in the teachings of the mystery schools and the hidden stories about the lost years of Jesus, it's brought out that he, of course, he wasn't ever lost at all. And those years were not lost either. They were well used by him in his extensive travels throughout the world between the Mediterranean and countries like China, Tibet. There are even traditions that say that he reached the Philippines and taught there. And there are secret sutras from China, the Chinese sutras, and there are records of him having been in Tibet and in throughout India. So he was extremely well versed in the concepts of the immortality of the soul as held by the Buddhists and others, the ancient Vedic religions of the subcontinent of India and Himalayan traditions and so forth. So Jesus certainly knew about reincarnation and would have had no reason not to include it as part of his teachings. And the early Gospels indicate that that's exactly what he did. The Gnostic religion also acknowledges reincarnation, and that was finally stamped out in the 12th century when the Cathars, who were the last sect of Christianity to believe in reincarnation, were massacred at Moulsegur by forces of the Vatican. So why then would they have been so determined to get rid of this teaching? Well, I'm not going to burden you with the stories, which to me don't matter very much. There are a lot of them. But here's what I think. You cannot have a religion become a political institution and a world power by giving people the freedom to determine their own lives, by telling people that they are the ultimate arbiters of their soul's destiny, that they are the architects of their lives, that they are the products of their past choices, and that the choices that they make every day determine where they're going to be in the future, what kinds of lives they're going to be living. Because you don't, in this kind of belief system, when you take ultimate responsibility for your own choices and the life that you're living now, you don't need the interference or the intervention of a church, of a priest that forgives you for the sins that, according to the church, you have committed, a priest that is your intermediary between you and your God, who stands between your soul and heaven. None of this is necessary with the belief in reincarnation, which puts you squarely in the center of your life and squarely in the place of the decision maker and where you're going to go. But this kind of giving people this kind of freedom and strength, and this kind of strength, and supporting this kind of strength for every individual parishioner would be very dangerous. First of all, there probably wouldn't be much of a need for parishes to have parishioners and churches and church structures and all of that. It would be more like the system of temples and so forth in the Far East, I imagine. Well, they couldn't have that if they were going to create and make this the backbone of the empire, which is what Constantine's advisors suggested that he do if he wanted to solidify his power, because Christianity was becoming a very powerful social and religious movement. The one thing that distinguished Christianity in those early years was that in every little community where there was a Christian community, there were bishops who were elected by their local flock. Their little community would decide who was the man most virtuous, most capable of leading them, and who understood better than anybody the teachings that Jesus had left them. And they would look for this kind of person, and they would elect him to be their bishop. And he was, of course, very responsive to the needs of his community who had elected him. Well, in one master stroke, Constantine removed the elected bishops all over the Christian world and replaced them with bishops of his choosing, his appointees, who were not responsible to their local communities, but rather who answered to him. All right, this was clearly a brilliant political move, if you're looking for that kind of thing. And then the next thing they had to do was then to find and weed out those scriptures, hunt them down, the scriptures that gave people the freedom to choose their own way, the freedom to determine the status of their own souls. Hunt those scriptures down, burn them, suppress them, hide them in the Vatican. And for sure there must be dozens of them hidden there, well out of our reach. And who knows when we'll ever have access to them. I look forward to that day. But this is what was done in the early church to create a political movement rather than a spiritual one. And so reincarnation had to go. but it never entirely went. I mean, how could something that is true be made to disappear? Well, it never did. There were always those who understood it, who taught it, who were persecuted, who were killed for it, burned for it, but it never died out. And so today there is, and there has been now for a number of decades, a great resurgence here in the West in interest. It began with Ralph Waldo Emerson and Henry David Thoreau in the middle of the 19th century, our wonderful transcendentalists on the East Coast who delved into Vedic literature and Buddhism, and who really understood the heart of it, Walt Whitman also, who was of that group too, who brought it into focus for America and the rest of the world. Some of the Irish mystics and those writers too revivified the whole understanding of reincarnation, so that what we have now today is a great rebirth. And as I told you earlier in another episode, about a quarter of the Western world now subscribes to reincarnation in one form or another, whether they actually specifically say that it's part of their belief system or not, even if they're Baptists or Christian Scientists or Mormons or whatever. They have their own take on reincarnation. So that's what I'm going to leave you with today. And I would encourage you then to realize that this is not a foreign concept. This is something that has always been with us, and that the great masters and teachers, and especially those that we love here in the West and part of our Western tradition, have believed in and taught for always. So thank you, and be sure to subscribe and keep up with my YouTube Reincarnation Chronicle channel, where I'll be posting videos on a regular basis on reincarnation, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Bye.